That is right, ladies and gentlemen. The most important announcement in the history of this year, the most significant change to human history this year is now upon us. The birth of my daughter. I am now a father, and in this episode, I am going to be sharing with you the details of the birth of my daughter, give it a little bit of context and details around that, as well as share some of the biggest takeaways or some of the biggest things that I think people get wrong in business when it comes to parenting and fatherhood or motherhood in that particular case. Some of the things that I got right, some of the big takeaways as well, because I've spent a lot of time preparing for this moment. Now, for those of you that don't know, the reason that we haven't had the podcast in a couple of weeks is because my daughter was born. My wife gave birth on November 22nd at 8 o'clock at night, and it was the day before Thanksgiving, and unto us was born little baby Willow. Her name is Willow Forti, and we love her to death. She's so freaking ridiculously cute, and she actually came 9 days early. My wife had some issues and some complications with things, nothing serious or life-threatening, but to where she had to be induced, and baby Willow actually came 9 days early. And so during those 9 days is when I had scheduled out to create some content and some podcast episodes or whatever, while I was going to take some time off. And because she came, over a week early, we weren't able to do that. But she's so precious. She's absolutely incredible. And one of the cutest. I will say this: I did not understand the whole baby thing. I didn't, right? And I grew up in a big family, seven siblings, so 8 of us in the family. I grew up around kids, lots of kids, and I've always known that I was going to have kids, and I've always known that I've even wanted kids. But I would hear people talk about their kids like it was just this, oh my gosh, once you have them, it's like the most life-changing thing ever, and blah blah. I didn't get it, right? And then we had Willow. And I will say it was not life-changing in the sense of how most people told me it was going to be life-changing, but instantaneously I understand, or I understood why people want to have kids. We want to have more already, right? And it's very, very exciting. And so her name was Willow. She was very, very little when she was born, but very long. She's very loud, and she's got my energy, very dramatic like me, but just absolutely adorable. And I'm absolutely loving dad life so much. We got her back. She actually wasn't breathing at birth, and so that was a crazy scenario. For about 10 to 12 minutes after she was born, she wasn't breathing. There were doctors that had to come in and put tubes down her throat. And sitting there as a father watching your newborn for the first time go through that was also a very interesting experience, just kind of with everything and everything that was involved. But yeah, so I'm a dad, and I would say life is going to change dramatically, I'm sure. I've been preparing for this moment for 8 or 9 months now, ever since we found out. But really, what I really want to share and kind of focus on here today is I see a lot of people that, particularly entrepreneurs, right? Particularly male entrepreneurs, men, right? That say, oh my gosh, like my kid was born and it changed my perspective of business. And, now everything's going to change inside of my business. And we got to rework the business, and we've got to go. And it's like post-birth, their life changes. Post-birth, everything that they've been building, they have this awakening moment of what really matters in life and blah, 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 and all of that. And I don't think that needs to be the case. And not that it's a bad thing, but, it's interesting. There's some pretty high profile people that I follow in the entrepreneurship world that, once they had a kid, like they shut down their business or they changed their business model entirely, and everything that they once taught was true, to be true, everything that you should focus on was now no longer true. And it's interesting for me to watch that, because I'm like, you have people that are following you, thousands of people, sometimes tens of thousands of people that are following you that come to you for advice. And then, something happens in your life, and now you're going to completely change everything. And now you're going to say that like everything that you've been teaching for the last several years doesn't matter anymore. Now we need to go and do this. That seems not disingenuous, but that just seems like maybe there was some thought that should have gone into that, right? And so, my wife and I, when we decided that we were going to have kids, actually when we got married, we wanted to have kids, right? And so this was, 4 or 5 years ago, when we got together and we were talking about this. That's when I started thinking about what children would do inside of the business. That's what I started, thinking about, how would this go and, affect things? And so it's interesting, at the end of last year, when I shut down my business and, recommitted my life to Christ, one of the things that I really, really focused on was, okay, how do I build something that's sustainable long-term? And, for me, as someone who is a Christian, a believer, someone that, is married and deeply, deeply, deeply committed to my wife, right? I love my wife. She's the most important person in my life outside of Jesus, right? And, knowing that I'm going to be a father, and knowing that I want to be involved in the church, and knowing that I do want to be an entrepreneur, but like also I have a life outside of this with, and I'm called to work out, in the church and other things outside of just entrepreneurship, while still entrepreneurship being a driving force. That's when I decided to go and start, really focusing on creating a business that was sustainable. This started 4 or 5 years ago. And, it's interesting. I will say this, I have a deep appreciation for mothers. I have a deep appreciation for what their body has to go through, and the whole process of delivery. I have a different appreciation for the medical system, although I will say our experience was mixed. Some of it I hate the medical system more, and in some ways I'm appreciative for certain types of doctors. But I know that delivery, and I know that having a baby can be difficult for a lot of people. It can change a lot of things for a lot of people. It can be expensive, for those people that don't have the resources to get everything that they need. I deeply feel for single mothers, right? I see the struggle, and I see what my wife is having to go through. And, the fact that I'm able to be there and provide for her, and, provide for her financially and with time, has been a huge, huge blessing. But it's interesting. My wife and I, like I said, have been designing this for a while. And so this whole process of delivery and this whole process of the baby being born has been very intentionally designed. Like, I took most of the month of December off. I did a big launch beforehand to make sure that the business was good, that we had cash flow, blah, 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 all that, right? We moved into a big house and, had the resources to go and have space and have a guest suite, so that when, mom or grandma or grandpa come over, they have a place to stay with its own separate, kitchen and stuff. And we have the resources, and we have every different thing that you could possibly need. And I also, designed my business in such a way to where I can basically take not the whole month off, but like a light month, to where I've changed my schedule to where I can have time with, with my wife and with my daughter, and be upstairs with them throughout the day, and work from the home office, right? And it's interesting, nothing in my business changed from a vision standpoint or a scheduling standpoint or what it was designed to do after my daughter was born. Yeah, obviously I'm going to take a little bit of time off, but like, what I'm teaching my students, what I'm teaching my clients hasn't changed. The fundamental principles of how we sell and how we build the business and how we build relationships, those are staying the same. In fact, I would even go so far as to say I have become more ingrained into believing that this is the model, and more ingrained to what I teach, because now I realize even more the importance of having a father figure present in the home, having, the father, the husband, be able to be there with his wife, right? After the, sorry, my phone's ringing here. After the time that, they're born. And so my encouragement, or my point with all of this is, if you're an entrepreneur and you are, particularly if you're a coach or consultant, you're someone that's teaching someone else how to build businesses or do models or different things like that. I think it's really, really, really important to understand what's important to you in life, and what will change. Like, what are the big milestones? What are the big things that, may change in your life? And what are the things that you're going to be committed to? And then make sure that you work those into the business model, right? I'll give you the perfect case in point. Last year, at the end of last year, I shut down a business that was doing, about $1 million a year in revenue. We were doing about $250,000 every quarter. And it was very high profit margin business. And I loved it. And as I fast forwarded into the future, and I looked at what was required to go and scale that business, I realized that it would require me to have a ridiculous amount of travel. It would require me to be on lots of stages. It would require me to have time away from my family. And, at one point in my life, that would have been fine. But I realized that while the skills of that business were good, right? Like doing 5-day challenges and selling high ticket offers and things of that nature, the model itself was not sustainable. And so as I took a step back, I was like, you know what, I'm going to shut down the business for multiple reasons, but like, Jesus really told me to, but I looked at that and went, wait a second. Okay. I realized that I want to build a business. I want to have sustainability in this that will allow me to A, be at home and present with my family, B, have a lot of time freedom. So that's going to require me, have a lot of time freedom, and C, have a lot of profit, have a lot of, margin in this, while also allowing me to transform people's lives. And so, as I looked at that, I was like, well, if I don't want to travel that much, especially in the early years of my daughter's, life, because we'll travel with her a lot. We travel a lot and she'll come with, but like for business, then I can't be speaking on stages every week, right? If I'm going to go and have time freedom, I can't be working with large volumes of clients in the coaching space. They have to be much more specific. I can't be doing lots and lots of things. I have to be doing very specific things. If I want high profit margins, I've got to be selling high ticket, right? I've got to be selling to wealthy clientele. I've got to be able to sell to people with money, right? And so as I looked at that and I reverse engineered back into the model of, what was going to work in my business, I realized that not only was that important, but that I was going to attract a specific type of clientele with that. And if you look at the type of clients that I work with and you look at the type of students that we have in the program, these people are very, very family focused. They're very faith-based, right? These values matter to them. And so it's my job and my responsibility as a man and as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a coach, to teach a business model, to teach something that is going to allow for those things to happen. Because I can't say that I value my faith. I can't say that I value my family. I can't say that I value, personal growth if I build a business that doesn't allow me to be in church every week, that doesn't allow me to be home with my wife and kid, right? It doesn't work. And so one of the things that I got right, I believe, and I think many people get wrong, is I took the time to surround myself with really smart people. I'm dumb, right? I grew up with no special talents, no special abilities, no connections, no money, right? I wasn't handed anything. My parents did a very good job of teaching me morality and things about God, but like I'm not particularly like, a genius or anything, but I've surrounded myself with wise and smart people that have what I want, people that have gone before me and made the mistakes. And so at the beginning of this year, I flew out to Brad Gibbs' house. Brad Gibbs runs 3 different companies and has 6 kids, is in church every single week, runs a Bible study, for kids, right? And is like very, very involved in his family's life and his church's life, right? And also runs 3 companies. And I sat down with him and I asked him, like, what do I need to think about? What do I need to consider when I'm building this model? And, I talked to him, I talked to, people like Russell Brunson, and I hired people like Katie Richardson, and I learned about what it took. I learned about, those things, and I worked that into the model, right? I worked that into the business. And so, as I sit down and I look at my beautiful daughter, I mean, she is just the most incredible human. Oh my gosh. Well, my wife is the most incredible human, but my daughter is like right there, right? And I love her to absolute death. And she's so strong and attentive and alert, and like her eyes are open and she's lifting her head already. She was lifting her head and rolling over at like 4 days old. It's insanity, right? There were complications that happened, right? We had to go back into the hospital a day after we got released. We had to be there overnight. There was emergencies there. We had to go back to the doctor several times. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was, running a company that was, time sucking and time consuming, right? I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have, the financial resources. We had to out of pocket a lot of different things that we wanted to do. I don't believe in a lot of the current medical system and what they do, right? And so, paying for a lot of, untraditional medicine or untraditional approach to giving birth out of pocket, that wouldn't have been possible if we didn't have the financial resources for it. And so, I certainly am in no way claiming that I have everything figured out as a father, like in no way, shape, or form. I mean, like we're a week in, right? I've got lots and lots and lots and lots and lots to figure out. However, when it comes to building a business that allows you to be a present father and also successful and also influential and also network with high-level individuals and charge lots of money and have time freedom, one of the things that I do believe that I've gotten right is surrounding myself with the right people, learning from them, and then building a model that reflects that. And that is the Golden Mike Method, right? The Golden Mike Method being centered around a podcast, and not a podcast in the traditional route or in the traditional sense of a podcast, not a podcast that's designed to get, massive following. That might happen, right? But rather a podcast that is designed to engineer what is required in your life to go out and build and live that life. And so I'm very, very excited for, this journey of fatherhood. I'm very excited, for what's next. I'm sure we will have more kids at some point as well, and just all that comes next with that. But I want you to know, well, 2 things. One is what I want you to know, and second is kind of like my advice or my plea, if you will, to you is, first, I want you to know that, if you're a student of mine, if you're a client of mine, if you're, following my stuff, my model isn't going to change, right, at post this. In fact, if anything, it's going to get more solidified in the Golden Mike method and involving what we do, selling ultra high ticket stuff, right? Selling $15,000, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 offers without ads, right? Selling and going and building the podcast, building the brand, building those relationships with wealthy people. That isn't going to change because it works and because that was intentionally designed, right? I found something that worked and then I built an intentional model around that. And so you can know that what I'm teaching and what I'm sharing, yes, it's going to evolve over time as we get better at it, but I'm not going to wake up and be like, this isn't the model, right? We use podcasts to connect. We use 5-day challenges to sell one to many. We use Google Docs to sell one-on-one. And that's what we do, right? And it works, and it works very, very well. And then secondly, my plea to you or my advice, if you will, if I'm qualified to give that, would be to really be intentional and think through your business model, think through, you as an entrepreneur. I know for me, I don't want to build a massive business. I want a very high profit, basically money printing machine. And I'm going to go, take that money and go invest it elsewhere, right? I'm not trying to build a company with 50 or 100 employees, at least not right now, right? I want a business that allows me to have the time freedom and have the financial resources to be the present father, to be the husband, to be the the follower of Christ, while also networking with high level people. And I learned this from Sam Ovens. He's like, whenever you want to go and are trying to do something and you've got multiple different choices, take a piece of paper and write down, all the pros and cons of everything and try to get all the pros on one side and all the cons on the other, and then go do that. And I feel like we can learn a lot from that, as we go out and do this. So anyway, I'm very, very excited. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful and beneficial. And I'm going to continue to share about my daughter. She's just incredible. Oh my gosh. Willow Forti, November 22nd. And life will never be the same. That's for sure. So thanks so much for listening. Appreciate it. By the way, last thing, we are going to be rebranding the podcast. We did our validation phase. It's funny, I teach this in Golden Mike. You go and you do a validation phase, and you do some interviews, you see how it sits. And so the premise of the podcast is going to stay the same, but we're going to be rebranding the name of the podcast and actually doing a very big launch and push. It's actually very similar to what happened with Think Different Theory. We did 20 or 30 episodes, and then we did a big launch. That's going to be happening at the beginning of next year. We got some really, really cool people lined up to come on to that. We've got Allison Prince coming on. We've got Eileen Wilder. We got Jeremy Miner coming on, the CEO of Seventh Level, or the founder of Seventh Level. We've got just some really cool big names coming on, and we're gonna have some really great content. So be paying attention to that. We'll also do a launch. We'll have Dan Henry on. And if you want to learn how to make lots of money, if you want to learn how to make life-changing money, if you're making less than 6 figures, let's say, and you want to learn how to make 300 grand, 500 grand, in take home, be sure to check out our podcast guide. We have Podcast to Profits Challenge. You can purchase the replays of those. We have our Podcast Profits Guide that literally shows you how to go and sell high ticket clients from the podcast. We try to make these resources available for either free or inexpensive. If there's to get the commitment level in there for you to kind of go through it and transform. If you want to learn a little bit more about the model we teach, the model I teach, the model I live out in my life every single day, you can go through it and check that out. But we will be doing the relaunch of the podcast later or early next year, and it's gonna be awesome. So thanks so much for listening. As always, hustle, God bless. Don't be afraid to go out there and be influential, make lots of money, and be intentional about creating your life. That's all for today. See you next time. Peace.